column or row, sorry, the last row, this is where the first thing is true and the second one is false. That's why this item is false. And if it's false, as long as one of them is false, as long as it's not a tautology, we say that this is an invalid argument, right? So again, looking at this thing here, in order for you to answer if it's a tautology, if it's a contradiction, is it equivalent or is it valid or invalid, you have to know how to construct the truth table. So again, that's why, first of all, question with this thing here, question on which column, question on the column or question on the row that I have here, or why this is invalid. All right. If you don't have question, number 22, same idea, right? The only thing different with 22 is they did not put in the formula for you guys, right? What is the formula? Which is reminder, your formula is this, right? Your first line and your second line imply your conclusion, which is, again, this is your formula in the way that reminder in number 22, the red ink are fixed. The red ink does not change, right? Number 22, whatever that red ink is, that is fixed. Your goal is whatever the first line you put first, whatever in the second line you put second, and whatever on the third line you put it third, which is, again, looking at this thing here, this is basically your formula, right? Your formula is your premise 1 and premise 2 imply your conclusion. So before we can say if it's valid or invalid, just like before, right? We need to construct the truth table, which is, again, to construct the truth table, as always, we want to work from left to right. Inside my bracket, I need to do the parenthesis first, which is everybody see that P error Q, which is, again, same idea, reminder, P error Q, the only time that is false is the first thing is true and the second one is false, which is T error F, which is everybody see that that is the only time that is false, right? Your criteria for the error, right? The conditional statement. And now, before I can do the AND statement, I need to have the negation of P, which is negation of P like before, which is false, false, true, true, the opposite of P, right? Which is now, everybody agree that I can do my AND statement. I forgot to highlight the red, but I can do my AND statement, which is my AND statement. Everybody see that I need to look at this parenthesis compared to this negation of P. So again, if I compare this two items, which is my AND statement, reminder, the AND statement is as long as there's a false, the result is false. So as you can see, the first two row is false because I see a false, and the last two row are not false because they both, the two column that I compare to, which is everybody see the red arrow, those are the two columns I compare. I don't care about the P, I don't care about the Q. I only compare to the red arrow, which is, again, those are the items that I compare to, which is, again, I have false, false, true, true. So I'm done with my bracket, right? Before I can do the last error, I need to do my second parenthesis, or I need to do what outside my parenthesis, outside my bracket. And again, this is Q, which is, again, as you can see, my error at Q or negation of P, which is, do you agree that to do this item, this is the two item I'm looking at, which is the Q negation of P, which is, again, what is the criteria of all? The criteria of all is as long as there's a true, which is we look at the two red arrow, right? As long as there's a true, the result will be true. Doesn't matter which one, as long as one of them is true, the result is true, which is, this is what I have. And once I have this thing here, everybody see that now I can finish it off. I can finish this thing off and say, again, looking at this thing here from left to right, my bracket, if the first thing is false, it's automatically true. If the first thing is true, I need to look at the second one, which is true, implied true is still true, and true implied true is still true, which is, as you can see, this is a tautology, which is it's all true. And if it's all true, we just say that this is a valid argument. Okay, so again, this is what we have in the SAN. Again, I did not highlight, I forgot to highlight some of the red ink, but again, question with this item here, or question with how I have this valid versus invalid, and how to construct this truth table. All right, if you don't have question, let's do from scratch. You know, as you can see, this, you know, the last 3 problem or 4 problem, they lead you to this item here, which is, this is, you know, some of this, or this is on your previous test, and most likely this problem, not exact problem, but this type of problem will be on your final exam, because they want to test if you know everything, which is, this is everything we learned in chapter 3, ladies and gentlemen, right? So they ask you to set up this following argument in symbolic argument, and is this a valid argument? So looking at this thing here, reminder, this is the 5-step to do this item, to work this item. There are 5 steps that you need to do, which is, reminder, the first step is to identify how many subjects you have, which is identify your P and identify your Q, right? So looking at this thing here, do you agree that there's only 2 items, which is either beignet, right? I will, if I have beignet, then I will have cafe au lait, which is, again, everything is related to beignet or cafe au lait. I don't have anything that I need to go Frank Quarter, or I'm at the mall or whatever, right? So only 2 items, which is, I only need P, which is, again, my P is I have beignet. My Q will be I will have cafe au lait. So looking at this thing here, do you agree that that's the first item we need? The step 1, we need to identify the P, identify the Q. Step 2 is, now we need to translate the P and the Q from word to symbolic, which is, everybody see that if I have beignet, which is P, imply Q, which is, again, P error Q. And the second line is, if, not if, right? I will have beignet if and only if. Because of the if and only if, I need the double error, which is if and only if I do not have cafe au lait, which is the negation of Q. And again, what is the conclusion? The 3 dot reminder, the 3 dot is just in conclusion, or therefore, right? So this thing here, therefore, the conclusion is I will have beignet or cafe au lait, which is P or Q. So now that's your step 2. Your step 2 is you take the English statement and you translate to symbolic. And now what's step 3? Well, step 3 is reminder, the red ink is fixed. The red ink does not change, right? So this is what we have, is we take the first line, we put first, and we take the second line, we put second. Therefore, or in conclusion, or implication, whatever, how you do it, the last line, which is the last parenthesis. So basically, everybody see that I take my first line, put first, second line, and my third line. Those are where my black ink come in, right? And again, the 4th step, which is, by now, you should expect that the 4th step, we need to construct a truth table. So to construct this truth table, looking at this thing here, as always, again, this truth table consists of everything we need to learn. Everybody see that we have a negation, we have the negation, we have the and, we have the or, we have the if and then, we have the if and only if. So this everything we learn here, which is the first thing we need to do as before, which is we need to work from left to right, attack the first parenthesis, which is, again, first parenthesis, which is the only time that is false, is the first thing is true, and the second one is false. Everywhere else is true, right? So again, the if and then, the single error to the right, the only time is false is the first thing is true, and the second one is false. Now, to do the second parenthesis, I am missing the negation of Q, which is negation of Q. Hopefully you guys remember, it's just the opposite of Q, false, true, false, true. And now I can do the if and then statement, which is, again, whenever you try to compare, whenever the connector, you always ask yourself, what two column am I connecting, right? What 2 column am I comparing? Which is, everybody see, I compare the P, if and only if, negation of Q. So when does this criteria true or when does this criteria false, which is reminder, in order for the double arrow to be true, they